Hello, everyone. Let's start with a little knowledge quiz. Take a second now and read the three statements, A, B, and C. Then match the correct answer to the correct statement. Your answer choices are 3%, 8%, and 70%. Let me read the statements while you consider your answer. A, percent of Americans over 65 who will need long-term care. 3%, 8%, or 70%. B, the percent of Americans who think it's very likely they will need long-term care at some point in their lives, 3%, 8%, or 70%. And C, percent of Americans who have long-term care insurance, 3%, 8%, or 70%. Okay, let's see how we did. Percent of Americans over 65 who will need long-term care, 70%. Percent of Americans who think it's very likely they will need long-term care at some point in their lives, 8%. Percent of Americans who have long-term care insurance, 3%. Well, thanks for playing along with our warm-up quiz, and welcome to our presentation, Getting Long-Term Care Planning Right, Smart Approaches for People of All Stages. My name is Tim Gardner, and I'm a wealth manager with Chatham Retirement Partners. Thank you for your attention today to learn more about long-term care planning for retirement. I want to assure you of one thing. After this presentation, I believe you'll be much better informed about the various ways people plan to have their long-term care paid for when needed. Now, you may be wondering, why am I giving a presentation about long-term care planning? Well, from time to time, I deliver presentations on various financial education topics, such as Social Security, retirement planning, tax planning, and the like. My goal, as always, is to inform and educate my audience so you can understand how critical planning topics like this affect your family. I do this specific presentation because I've had clients and family members confront the challenge of long-term care. Some have done a much better job of planning than others. My goal, as you'll see, is to encourage you and your family to make plans now. We all want financial security in retirement, and when we can address how we'll pay for long-term care, we're more likely to be able to enjoy our retirement and be optimistic about our future. Now, this presentation is organized into 4 keys. Each one builds on a previous one to form a solution to our presentation problem. And as you'll see, to help you remember what we're covering, we've already prepared some notes for you. Just click the link in the chat box down below and download the PDF for this presentation. It's titled Finally Getting Long-Term Care Planning Right, and it's a summary of the presentation that you can take home and refer to as needed. Now, you may have questions as we go along. I'm always trying to respect one's time, so I won't be taking questions during the presentation so we can finish on time, but I will take any questions at the very end, and I'll be glad to talk to you about your specific situation. I also want to mention at the end of our presentation, I'll invite you to a long-term care planning overview meeting. This is a no-charge one-on-one meeting that offers you the chance to discuss in private the issues raised by today's presentation, and I'll tell you more about it later. I also want to ensure you this is not a sales presentation. You'll hear nothing remotely of the type. This presentation is about a process and not a product. So let's proceed to start by asking the question, what is long-term care and why is it important and what problems does it solve? Well, the problem is that when it comes to planning for a safe and secure retirement, long-term care remains confusing and an unaddressed challenge to many people's financial security. While many people understand the basic idea that some retirees may need long-term care, planning for it is often overlooked. There are many reasons why people put off planning for long-term care, including it seems remote or too far off. Many people think they already have a good financial plan, but it may not address long-term care. It's a stressful subject that people don't want to talk about. A belief that Medicare or Medicaid may pay for it. A misconception that people won't need to pay for care or that their family will take care of them. A belief that it's far too expensive and just too far out of reach. They expect to pay for it out of pocket. or the belief that long-term care won't be needed. The costs and risks associated with not planning for long-term care extend to your family as well as they include emotional and financial issues. On the emotional side, lack of planning may result in family strife about responsibilities and care management. It's not uncommon for some family members to shoulder the vast amount of responsibility for overseeing or even giving care to loved ones. When not planned in advance, trouble often ensues. Making late in life decisions for loved ones where cost and quality of care comes into play can be stressful and a difficult situation for your family. Many of us are familiar with the phrase the sandwich generation, and taking care of an elderly family member is one of the daunting halves of that equation. On the financial side, lack of long-term care planning also exacts costs, which include their own lost wages. If you are not able to pay for care and rely upon them to provide much of it to you, haphazard, unplanned approach to paying for long-term care can result in very different and unintended tax treatments for the money you want to save and leave to your heirs. And of course, your retirement and estate plan wishes, like helping to pay for a grandchild's education. That may never come to pass if you're forced to use up all your savings to pay for long-term care when a plan would protect those goals. So, to sum it up, just imagine for a second a picture of an 85-year-old woman trying to take care of her 87-year-old husband. It's not a pretty sight, is it? Now, I can imagine some of you are saying to yourself, whatever happens, I just don't want to be in a nursing home if it's all possible. That's a pretty common feeling I've heard frequently from clients. So that brings us to our first key. Long-term care isn't about an elderly person sitting in a nursing home. It's a wide range of services designed to help people with health and personal care needs. So, we haven't defined exactly what we mean by long-term care. The National Institute of Aging defines long-term care as a variety of services designed to meet a person's health and/or personal care needs so that they can live as independently and safely as possible when they can no longer perform everyday activities on their own. These everyday activities are often referred to as the 6 basic activities for daily living, and they include the ability to clean oneself and bathing and perform grooming activities such as shaving or brushing teeth, dressing, the ability to get dressed by oneself without struggling with buttons or zippers, eating, the ability to feed oneself, transferring, being able to either walk or move oneself from a bed to a wheelchair and back again, toileting, the ability to get on and off the toilet, and incontinence, the ability to control one's bladder and bowel functions. Additionally, care could be fully hands-on care, where the care recipient is completely dependent on the caregiver to perform these activities, or as simple as standby care, where someone's just there when assistance is needed. So, who really needs long-term care? There's a widely held belief that long-term care planning isn't necessary because it's too far off and likely won't be needed. Remember our question from the long-term care quiz. Question A was ask the percentage of Americans over 65 who will need long-term care. Question B asked the percentage of Americans who think it's very likely they will need long-term care at some point in time in their lives. You see, only 8% think they'll need long-term care, but that's widely off the mark. While it's true that as early as 2016, just under half of all Americans over 65 would have no long-term care needs in their lifetime, as recent as 2021, someone turning 65 has almost a 70% chance of needing some kind of long-term care service or support in their remaining years. And of the 70%, 10 to 15% need care for more than 3 years. Additionally, the number of people with Alzheimer's or dementia is rapidly increasing. Between 2017 and 2023, total number of people living with Alzheimer's is projected to increase by 35%, and the projected number of new Alzheimer's cases is expected to increase by 110% between 2010 and 2050. Long-term care is provided in many different settings, including at-home care, community-based care, and a wide range of live-in options, from independent living to assisted living with add-on to full-time nursing care. Often, as is the case with Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases, full-time skilled nursing care may follow a much longer period of long-term care provided in other settings. So, let's take a deeper look at these options. While being cared for in one's home in one's declining years is one of the most common ways long-term care is provided, relying on extended family and friends is no longer the only option. As you know, relying on loved ones for your long-term care needs is fraught with both financial and emotional challenges. Fortunately, one can receive many services at home that in the past were provided just by family, and these services can accommodate various levels of need. They can include part-time or full-time health aides who attend to daily living needs and household chores, visiting nurses and doctors who can perform medical care, other support services like Meals on Wheels, which can provide food and other services. Necessary medical equipment can be used at home, and case managers to help the needs of someone receiving home health-based care. While care in one's home is sometimes called community-based care, there are programs outside of one's home that can supplement the care one is receiving in their home. Depending upon the state, these adult daycare centers may be licensed or not, depending upon the services they provide. Some may provide just social activities and interactions with others. Often licensed providers provide health care as well. In addition, they can provide needed respite to the in-home caregiver, whether that is a loved one or a hired professional. As the name indicates, those living in independent living settings are primarily able to live on their own. While this term can cover those still living at home independently, it often refers to housing units, often apartments or townhomes, that are connected to a continuing care retirement community or within a standalone retirement community. In a continuing care retirement community, there are options to step up to a more robust form of care, like assisted living, which we'll discuss next. But often, seniors are able to stay within the independent living home in a CCRC or retirement community longer than they may have stayed in their own home by adding limited support, like someone to help them with their medications or some personal care. In retirement communities, this additional support is often called Independent Living Plus. In a CCRC, if the resident's needs progress or become more extensive, then the move to assisted living part of the community may be necessary. Assisted living is an example of something in the middle, where residents may need help with daily medications, dressing and grooming, and can still perform some of the activities on their own. If one's need for help with activities of daily living exceed what's possible with additional services, as one continues to live independently, stepping up to assisted living is likely the next step. Assisted living communities provide personalized care in residential setting, usually allowing the residents to bring their furniture from home and providing social opportunities to become part of a community. While those in assisted living settings need more care than those in independent living ones, they do not need the full-time skilled nursing care provided in a nursing home. Additionally, assisted living communities often provide their residents with options for meals, laundry, housekeeping, and transportation. As one might imagine, the costs of all this care can be significant. Medical costs in general keep rising, especially for retirees as their health care needs increase. In 2021, the average 65-year-old couple would need $300,000 in today's dollars for medical expenses in retirement, excluding long-term care costs. And for those Individuals, the number is 157,000 for women and 143 for men, thousand for men, excuse me. That's up 30% from 10 years ago. Of course, as those are median national numbers, there are many places where those costs are far higher. For example, in the New York City metropolitan area, the median cost per month for assisted care or assisted living is just shy of $6,000. And for a semi-private room in a skilled nursing facility, it's almost $13,000. So half of the options in the New York area cost even more than this. And these are in today's prices. Like other healthcare costs, the cost of long-term care to continue to rise over time at a much faster rate than the general rise in the cost of living. But now you may be thinking, it's good to know there are feasible options beyond a nursing home. They seem expensive though. But won't Medicare or Medicaid cover this if my needs are really serious? That thought brings us to our second key in understanding why long-term care planning is a critical piece to achieving a safe and secure retirement. Key two, counting on Medicaid or Medicare is not a plan most people want to rely upon for long-term care, and many aren't eligible for it anyway. In the next several slides, we'll explore the misconceptions about Medicare and or Medicaid for paying for rising costs of long-term care. Many people incorrectly believe that Medicare will cover their long-term care costs. As good as Medicare is, long-term care is not covered by Medicare, which only covers short-term rehabilitative care that's less than 90 days. The key word here is rehabilitative. For Medicare to pay for any services, the medical opinion has to be that the patient will recover and be able to live a fully independent life again. Additionally, if you are covered by Medicaid care, for rehabilitative services, it's important to understand that Medicare only pays for certain short-term services like skilled nursing or therapy, either speech or physical, but does not pay for custodial care. That's the kind of help that daily living activities in long-term care assist with. It also pays nothing for the costs of senior independent living or assisted living. Now, Medicaid is not Medicare. Medicaid is a state and federally funded means-tested poverty assistance program, and it may cover long-term care for eligible individuals. Many low-income Americans use Medicaid to pay for long-term care, and Medicaid does, in fact, pay for long-term care services that Medicare does not. But if this is all you know about Medicaid, you are in for some big surprises, because Medicaid covers long-term care for eligible low-income adults. However, a key surprise is finding out that you must use up all of your assets first to pay for your care before you qualify for Medicaid benefits. The Medicaid applicant can only have $2,000 in assets, though your non-Medicaid spouse may keep some limited assets, and the amounts vary from state to state. Income is also severely limited by Medicaid recipient, with most states capping income at between $100,000 to $200,000 in the federal poverty level. To give you an idea of what that looks like, in California, a single person can make no more than $16,395 per year. Works out to be about $1,366 per month. While there are some income and asset protections for the healthy spouse of a Medicaid qualified long-term care recipient, these protections are not unlimited. Even if you have exhausted many of your assets as you approach the need for long-term care and your income is low, What's known as the look-back period may still disqualify you from enrolling in Medicaid. Usually covering the 5 years prior to your Medicaid application, the look-back period seeks to establish if you have transferred any assets to another person during that time. If the assets are transferred during the look-back period would put you over the Medicaid asset limit, you'll be disqualified from Medicaid even though you no longer have assets at the time of application. Even if you do qualify for Medicaid, you still may have another rude awakening. There's a significant shortage of Medicaid beds within long-term care living facilities of all types. Not every room or bed in a facility will qualify for Medicaid payments, and long wait lists for Medicaid beds can exist even with overall low occupancy rates. Sometimes people do not initially qualify for Medicaid when they first enter a long-term care living facility. But as they spend down their assets to pay for this housing and care, they may become qualified. While this may sound like an okay option, there's yet another surprise. The room you've been living in may not be one that's designated as a Medicaid room, and you can be forced to move from the room you've been occupying to a less desirable Medicaid room when Medicaid starts paying for your care. The shortage in the wait list of rooms and the issue of being forced to move to a different room will become even more significant and common as baby boomers age. By 2030, all boomers will be 65 or older, making 1 out of every 5 U.S. residents of retirement age. Since Medicare doesn't pay and Medicaid requires you to use up all your assets without any other plan, these are big costs that will need to come out of your pocket. Even if your retirement planning took future non-long-term care medical expenses into consideration, which can be quite significant, you can see how long-term care expenses can eat into your planned annual medical income numbers in a big way. All of this is just another way of saying that not planning for long-term care can be costly and risky. So at this point, you're probably at the point where, so at this point, you probably get that it might be prudent to do some planning and not rely on Medicare or Medicaid. But you may be thinking, well, I've heard over the years that long-term care insurance isn't a good deal at all. So are there really any other options? This brings us to our third key. Given the historic problems with long-term care, it's understandable that people have avoided making plans. While long-term care insurance is only one way to plan for long-term care, it's understandable that people avoid this topic altogether due to the historic problems with products designed to address this concern. It's quite possible that you may have had a loved one purchase what we'll call a first-generation long-term care insurance policy, and you may, through them, have had some bad experiences with these original, traditional long-term care insurance policies. This insurance was first introduced in the late 70s, though it really didn't catch on until the late 80s and early 90s. At the time this original long-term care insurance policy was introduced, there were really only 2 options for receiving care: nursing homes or at-home care provided by loved ones. Concepts like adult daycare and assisted living were foreign to most people. During the 80s, the options for care started to expand, as did the demand for these services and long-term care insurance policies as well. It provided a good option for the one most common way people paid for these costs at the time: selling their home. Many insurers got into the business because it seemed like a really good one. While these original long-term care policies seemed like a good idea, and they were a hot commodity during the 80s and 90s, eventually they became fraught with problems. One of the problems was with original underwriting. The insurers underestimated the increases in longevity and the increases in healthcare costs. Unlike life insurance or medical insurance or car insurance, which you might buy multiple times over the course of your life. By design, long-term care insurance is something you buy once and likely hold until you need the benefits. As policyholders started making claims many years or decades after first buying the policies and having paid premiums those years, insurance companies began to figure out their mistake. What was once seen as a lucrative was now a money-losing product. Though some insurance companies made good on the claims and lost money, some did not. Policyholders ran into all kinds of issues when the insurance companies tried to fix their mistake, including skyrocketing premiums, including post-claims underwriting, that is, charging premiums based on the claims submitted, refusal to qualify policyholders for benefits if they didn't require nursing care in addition to custodial care, requiring hospitalization prior to covering care, policy cancellations for reasons other than non-payment of premium. Long-term care insurance has improved a lot over the last 25 years. Regulators have enacted reforms in 1993, 1996, 2000, and 2005 to provide consumer protections. These include requirements that all new long-term care policies include that they provide coverage for all forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's, cannot require hospitalization in order to qualify for benefits, cannot require that skilled care be needed in order to pay for custodial care, made language under which claims can be clearer, do all underwriting up front, no post-claims underwriting, cannot be canceled by the insurer at any time except for the unpaid for not paying premium, and premium increases are now regulated. While these regulatory changes made newer long-term care policies more appealing to consumers, the changes were not retroactive. This means that older policies without these protections are still out there causing problems. So, you may be starting to get the idea that planning for long-term care is almost futile and out of reach. But there's actually some good news. Because of the historic challenges around long-term care, there have been a lot of changes in recent years, and there's reason to be hopeful about long-term care. This brings us to our fourth key. New approaches in planning for long-term care address people's skepticism and provide a wide range of flexible options to people of all financial planning stages and health. These newer approaches to planning for long-term care are as varied as the people who need them, providing a wide range of flexible and security to people in all stages of financial planning and health. They roughly fall into two categories: improved long-term care insurance, long-term care options on life insurance and annuities, and other financial instruments and assets. Let's briefly look at each. As discussed earlier, regulatory changes led to improvements in traditional long-term care insurance, or LTCI, that you pay a premium for a future claim on a long-term benefit care need. There are no benefits outside long-term care coverage, though the details of the benefits vary from policy to policy. They frequently have cost of living protections, so that the benefit will increase over the years, protecting you against the rising costs of healthcare. The next category of approaches for planning for long-term care is products that have long-term care benefits. Most well-known of these are life insurance policies that have long-term care benefit options, but they also include annuities that carry similar long-term care features. These policies are sometimes referred to as hybrids, as they provide benefits of life insurance or annuity, and a benefit for long-term care. They're very popular as they provide a benefit even when no long-term care is needed. There are many different ways to structure these policies, but in general, they allow the policyholder to draw down life insurance or annuity benefits to pay for long-term care costs while still alive. These policies can give someone peace of mind that long-term care needs will be met, while also providing a death benefit if the long-term care benefits are not used, or if the benefits do not exceed the death benefit of the policy. There are other financial strategies that can be leveraged to to pay for long-term care. Let's take a look at those. Equity in your home. One option for those who own their own home is to take a reverse mortgage. This allows homeowners to draw against the equity in their house to pay for long-term care costs. One downside of a reverse mortgage is that you potentially are using the equity in your home, but they usually include various benefits, which include tax benefits, as the loan proceeds are generally not taxable. When the home is sold to repay the mortgage, if the proceeds of the sale are less than the mortgage company has to take the loss rather than being able to go after the assets of the homeowner or the homeowner's estate. It usually means that the homeowner cannot pass on his home to his or her heirs. Another way to use the equity in your home is to pay for long-term care is by setting up a home equity line of credit, or HELOC. A HELOC allows a homeowner to draw against the line of credit when funds are needed. Often, there is no or very minimal annual fee to maintain this line, and no interest paid until draws are made. HELOCs have different structures with interest only or payments and interest options during the draw, and various draw/repayment terms. You can also cash in on an existing life policy for living benefits. Those over 65, selling a life insurance policy to a life settlement company for a percentage of the death benefit is one option for funding long-term care. The percentage received also depends upon one's age and health status. Many life insurance policies offer accelerated benefits to pay for care for those who are terminally ill. Using pre-tax savings like IRAs to purchase long-term care. Retirement assets can be surprisingly substantial and a good source of long-term care needs. Using a Roth conversion of a portion of a traditional IRA or a backdoor IRA contribution for those who make too much to receive the tax benefits of a Roth contribution can help create funds to pay for long-term care, as Roth IRAs can grow tax-free and are not subject to minimum distributions. Of course, consult your tax professional before going down this road. Long-term and disciplined funding and use of a health savings account is another way to help pay for long-term care, as both costs themselves and long-term care insurance premiums can be qualified health expenses. There are challenges and drawbacks to each of these strategies, so further discussion of them would be part of creating a long-term plan for paying for health care. What about simply funding one's long-term needs when and if the need arises out of their investment assets? Should you self-fund? Are you relatively young and healthy? While self-funding is always an option, one school of thought suggests that investments are not suitable for insurance and insurance is not suitable for investments. While it may make sense for some people, for others it does not. Here's a simple example of how it might not work. The additional challenges of self-funding include not knowing when you will need that care or for how long. There's a school of thought that says investment should be for investments and insurance should be for investments. It also says that you should invest well to ensure financial independence and insure well to protect financial independence. As mentioned earlier, these long-term care options are as varied as the people who need them. So, which factors go into determining which is the right one? There are many, but they may include your age, your marital status, your health, and if you're married, the health of your spouse, your military service. Some veterans may be eligible for long-term care assistance, where you live and where you intend to retire, your health, family history, the assets and your wealth outlook, other financial and retirement planning, and your legacy and estate plans. While some may feel too young to be thinking about long-term care planning, some options are best started when you're young and healthy. Others may think that they're too old or too ill to make up for the lack of planning. But in fact, there are options for people in this situation, as well as all in between. Overall, as a good guide, here are some questions you'll want to keep in mind as you consider long-term care. Who will provide the care? Where do you want the care? How will you pay for the care? It's important you keep in mind a few other things. Your situation is unique. There is no cookie cutter solution for everyone. You can receive care in your own home, whether you pay for it with a policy or with other strategies. And having a plan is important. Doesn't mean the plan has to necessarily cover all the costs. We're getting close to the finishing up, so let's recap. We started with a problem. When it comes to a safe and secure retirement, planning for long-term care remains confusing and an unaddressed challenge to many people's financial security. Then we discussed the 4 keys to financial security through planning for long-term care. Key 1, long-term care isn't about an elderly person sitting alone in a nursing home. It's a range of services designed to help people with health and personal care needs. Key 2, counting on Medicare or Medicaid is not a plan most people want to rely on for long-term care, and many aren't eligible anyway. 3, given the historic problems with long-term care insurance, it's understandable many people have avoided making a plan. And 4, new approaches to planning for long-term care address people's skepticism and provide a wide range of flexible options for people of all stages of financial planning and health. So that brings us to a natural conclusion, the solution to our original challenge, and here it is. In order to feel safe and secure about your retirement plan, you need a custom approach, a real plan on how you'll pay for long-term care. We've seen a variety of approaches to this challenge. I'd like to invite you to come in for a one-on-one meeting where we can discuss what options you'd like to consider as your plan for long-term care. Developing a strategy to how you'll pay for long-term care is a smart and responsible approach to planning for your long-term financial security in retirement. How can you get a real plan? One that's customized to your unique needs? As I mentioned during my introduction, I always invite people to come in for a no-charge long-term care planning overview meeting. One thing we'll do in this meeting is review our long-term care planning options guide that you see here. This is a chance for us to discuss your personal situation and answer any specific questions you may have about long-term care planning. Again, this is not a sales meeting. The goal of this meeting is to help you start formulating a plan. So come on in and talk to us. As financial professionals, I have over 30 years of planning experience to help you with your long-term care planning so you can feel secure and that you've got a plan that's right for you. I've put a link to my calendar down in the chat if you'd like to take advantage of that. Otherwise, we'll open it up for questions.